All right, let's talk about the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon, otherwise known as the frequency illusion. You have all experienced it. I know that sounds like a mouthful, but stay with me because you've experienced it, and sometimes it can be a detractor from being successful in discovering truth and discovering metaphorical and literal treasures in our life and in our searches and solving problems. So, the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon is where you are drawn to some particular object or number or word or phrase or something like that, and it kind of burns in your memory, and then you see it everywhere. Maybe you were looking for a new car and you were introduced to a particular new car, it captured your attention, then all of a sudden it seems like everyone on the road is driving that car. I'm saying that in an exaggeratory way, but you get the idea that you just see it in so many other places. It's like it all of a sudden just started appearing when it really wasn't around before. But in fact, nothing changed except your perception. There were just as many of those cars on the road the day before than there were the day after you started paying attention to it. And that is how this frequency illusion works. Now, I'm going to share a personal experience of where this happened to me, and it lasted for over 2 decades, and how it actually became kind of problematic or a little bit misleading. But then after that, stay with me, and I will give you 5 ways that we can all use to try to overcome and not let the frequency illusion or Baader-Meinhof phenomenon detract us from discovering those metaphorical and literal treasures, solving those problems in our lives, things like that. So here's this story. When I was in my 20s, I was teaching high school, and I was also helping coach cross country. And there was a young man who, during track season, that we were considering recruiting to join the cross country team. He was a soccer player, though. I don't think he did any distance running. And he was convinced they convinced him to run the mile, and he ran for the first time. I don't think he'd even really trained other than the running he got on the soccer field, which is significant. And he ran a 4:44 mile. And it was very exciting. It was an impressive time for him and for this school level, and especially given that he'd not run before, at least competitively in this way. And the number just stuck with me. And over the next week, I saw the number 4:44 at least 10 places. Like in my life, I just seem to notice the number all over the place, and honestly, to this day, even decades later, I still notice the number 444. And somewhere along the way, maybe 10 or 15 years later, it was so prominent and I would notice it, and it just became front of mind anytime I saw the number 444, that I began to wonder, maybe there's some significance, maybe there's a mystery, maybe there's someone out there trying to give me a clue to something I'm supposed to pay attention to. I mean, it was this kind of conspiracy theory that emerged in my mind, that this number has some kind of special importance for me. And when I would look at my watch and it would say that it's 4:44, I was like shocked, like, whoa, I can't believe that I just looked at my watch at exactly 4:44. I wonder what that means. And and so this is a real thing. Now, I'm not convinced that it does mean anything at all. This is a common cognitive bias, this frequency illusion. We all experience it. We notice and see things that are front of mind for us. And sometimes that can be helpful because maybe you want to prime yourself to look for a particular thing so that you notice it and you don't miss it. But in other cases, sometimes it's a largely irrelevant or not very helpful, even useless piece of information, and it could even be distracting you from things that are more relevant, more important to the clue or problem you're trying to solve. So, how do we get past it? There are 5 really simple strategies, but as is true for overcoming any logical fallacy or cognitive bias, these take work. It's not like you just sort of listen to this video, tuck away these 5 strategies and put them into practice, and all of a sudden this is never an issue again. No, this is part of how our brains are wired, and so how we're designed. So these cognitive biases, while they have downsides, they can have some pluses to them as well. So let's just talk about the 5 things that you can work on. First one is pause before assuming increased relevance. So if you see something over and over and over again, actually stop and say, has the frequency of this really increased? Or am I just noticing it more? And that can be really, really helpful to do that. And that's going to take some time. It forces you to kind of think a little bit differently. Second one I jotted down here is cross-check the frequency objectively. So with that first question, you may not be able to honestly answer it because you don't know. It feels like it's more frequent because you're seeing it more often. So what you can do is actually force yourself to kind of tally your observations over time, and you'll see if the frequency is actually increasing or if it's just this phenomenon that's at work in your mind. The third one is to frame it as heightened awareness and not proof. So teach yourself as a problem solver to know that just because I notice something more doesn't mean that it is the solution to the problem or the solution to the clue. Just because I notice it could just mean that I'm drawn to the color red or the color blue or something else of that sort. And that doesn't necessarily make it a better choice. In fact, I'm told that illusionists even use this kind of phenomenon where they will expose people to a certain concept, color, idea, or theme that's unknown to the crowd, and then they ask them to pick a number or pick a color or pick a celebrity, and the illusionist has a better guess of what you're going to pick because they've been priming you to think about it. So frame it as just heightened awareness and not proof. The fourth one is look for some independent verification. So since this is something that's happening in your mind, find someone whose mind is different from yours and ask them and check in with them. And this is true for a lot of cognitive biases. While groupthink is a problem, and if you have a group of people, you can collectively lead one another in the wrong path, but you can also use other people to verify and sort of check yourself. And that's certainly true for this. And then the fifth one is actually use it as a positive. Use it as a training tool. So as you come to notice that you can come across a number like 444, like I did, and then all of a sudden you see it everywhere, and even for decades you're attentive to it, that means that you can teach your brain to be attentive to other things as well. And so use this as a tool and then start to prime your brain to look for other objects and numbers and things. So actually use this part of how your brain was designed in order to see things that are more relevant and more helpful to what you're trying to accomplish, the clue you're trying to solve, problem you're trying to solve, whatever else it might be. So this could be very helpful. I hope you find these ideas useful. Look forward to your comments.